gathering on the traditional lands of the Western Abenaki people. We respect their relationship to this land and seek to learn from their wisdom how we can better grow in care for this earth, justice, and peace. As a small group of the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, this year we have benefited from the book of Indigenous wisdom reflected in Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She reminds us that wisdom starts with thanksgiving. So here are 4 stanzas out of the 15 total of the Thanksgiving Address from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Words Before All Others. We are thankful for the people. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other. Now our minds are one. We give thanks to the earth. We are thankful to our mother, the earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she cares for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. Now we turn toward the vast fields of plant life. As far as we can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. With one mind, we turn to honor and thank all the food plants we harvest from the garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains, vegetables, beans, and berries have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greeting of thanks. Now our minds are one. Now we turn to all the medicine plants of the world. From the beginning, they were instructed to take away sickness. They are always waiting and ready to heal us. We are happy there are still among us those special few who remember how to use these plants for healing. With one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the medicine plants. Now our minds are one.
It's not a perfect world, but it's still wonderful. And it is wonderful to be here with some friends in person, and those of you who are joining us on Zoom or YouTube. Good morning. This is CVUUS's Summer in the Arts series, and today we're looking at the art of being mindful of nature. So you went for a virtual walk, which you couldn't do because of the rain right now. So we went for a virtual walk and we enjoyed the Thanksgiving address. I hope that throughout the service there are other ways that you are being invited into being mindful of the world around us. Our own pastor, Barnaby Leader, has the Sunday off, though he is around. My name is Liam Batches, and I had the privilege this year of leading the Braiding Sweetgrass group, which is a small group that met on the new moons and the full moons of the year. And we started because I didn't want to tell time according to COVID this year. I didn't want to tell time according to the fear within our media or the worry about our economy or all of that anxiety. I wanted to tell time according to the real world. What was happening in nature around us. So meeting by the lunar cycles gave me a whole new calendar. It also gave us some very odd meeting times. But we had a great time and with reading from Braiding Sweetgrass and also activities. A lot of them virtual, and they became more virtual as the pandemic progressed. But it was a privilege. There's a couple things for Pathways to Connection you could consider. One, hey, we have a full moon this week. This week is either, some people call it the blueberry moon, that's what I tend to do, or some Native Americans call it the buck moon, because it's the moon in which male deer start getting their antlers. So you can join us on Thursday at 10 a.m. for some blueberry picking at Valley View Farms in Ticonderoga. The owner there plays some magnificent jazz when you're waiting to go picking. So you can pick blueberries for a few bucks and balance the blueberry moon and the buck moon. And also you could join us on the next full moon, the 18th of August. We're meeting at the Maritime Museum to pick up Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah is actually a novel, a biography, written by a Vermont-based artist about her Aunt Sarah, who lived 108 winters, and she was born in the 1820s. And her life takes her past through the Civil War and into the post-Depression. And in that lifetime, you see her Abenaki culture move from traditional Abenaki culture to being displaced to just adapting to life as she goes through life. So you're more than welcome to join us in the Maritime Museum. You might say, why the Maritime Museum? But the Maritime Museum hosts the Abenaki Art Council, and they have a collection of these novels. And so we'll pick up Aunt Sarah there, and also become familiar with the Abenaki's place within our neighborhood. Those are some pathways to connection. This group also helped us connect with people who wouldn't otherwise be able to be here. So there are a couple of members that this is their first time in the sanctuary for several years, or at all. One new member and new friend, I should say a new friend, Mary, I'd say it wrong, Sadada. Mary Sadada, neighbor, friend, and her husband down are here, and Mary's going to be doing our chalice lighting.
In some ways, like the original Sky Woman, we have fallen into this place. In some ways, like Sky Woman, we have been supported by the many gifts of the world around us: water, earth, Turtle Island, creatures, and plants. In some ways, our lives as humans, animals, and plants are braided together and inseparable, interrelated and interdependent. In some ways, when humans braid sweetgrass, we are acknowledging this. We are braiding the hair of Mother Earth, showing her our loving attention, our care for her beauty and well-being, in gratitude for all she has given us. During this time together, may we braid together our thoughts and intentions and grow in our appreciation of our relations within the real world. We light this chalice in thanksgiving for Brother Sun shining upon all the children of Mother Earth, the plants, the animals, and the people.
The hymn is in your teal book, number 1067.
All our days you crowned our being, sage and fish of grass and fruit. Birds to heal us, plants to feed us, men to chill and tend and plow. With the pendant deepest glimmer, Lord, we ask you be here now. Where inspiration holds together relatives, as we breathe our minds see clearly, leading us to glory. Praises by the dead and gentle Lord, with a blade as sharp as morning, must we ask you be here now. Under fire, religious order, the passion of the storm. In our hearts, your warmth resides as roots are food and meets our bones. Flaming candle bright within us, praising desert hills true grow. With the one directing mountains, we ask you be here now.
So good to be together. A woman named Robin wrote the book Braiding Sweetgrass, and in it she explains how gifts from the earth create relationships and connect us. She writes about seeing itty-bitty wild strawberries as a gift when she was a little girl. As a little girl, when the fields gave us strawberries, we picked them and gave them to my dad, who in turn gave thanks to the strawberries. I tried to show my appreciation for the strawberries, and after I picked them, I returned to the plants and found they were sending out little runners to grow in new directions. I weeded out the other plants and loosened the soil in the direction these runners were heading, and sure enough, a year later, during the strawberry moon, there were even more strawberry gifts to share. No person taught us to do this. The strawberries themselves showed us. Because they had given us a gift, we had started a friendship. I spent time watching them grow, and I gave back by working the soil around them. In addition to wild strawberries, there were farm strawberries. Farmers around us grew a lot of strawberries, and they sometimes hired us kids to pick them. My siblings and I would ride bikes to the Crandall's farm to pick berries and to earn some spending money. We earned a dime for every quart we picked. But Mrs. Crandall was a persnickety boss. She stood at the edge of the field and gave us the rules for picking and warned us not to crush any berries. She said, "These berries belong to me, not to you. I don't want to see you kids eating these berries." So I learned the difference between wild berries and farmed berries. The wild berries belong to themselves and could offer themselves as gifts. These farm berries, Mrs. Crandall sold for 60 cents a quart. And if we wanted to buy any berries, bring any berries home, we could buy them with our wages. Of course, these farm berries were 10 times bigger than the wild ones, but not nearly as good. Wild berries fit the definition of a gift, but grocery store berries are not a gift. It's the relationship between the producer, the seller, the buyer, and the consumer that changes everything. Berries are meant to be gifts between friends. I would be really offended if I saw wild berries in the grocery store. I would want to kidnap them all. They were not meant to be sold, only to be given. I can see the headlines in the newspaper now if I did such a thing. Woman arrested for shoplifting berries and claims she was part of the Strawberry Liberation Front. We people of the First Nations see many plants as sacred gifts. For example, sweetgrass, which we have some right here, belongs to Mother Earth. Sweetgrass pickers collect the grass as a gift. We say thank you. We do not take too much, and how we collect sweetgrass is actually good for the plants. And we give Mother Earth gifts of appreciation in return. Then we give braids of sweetgrass to our friends to honor them, to say thank you, or to pray for their healing. The sweetgrass keeps moving along as a gift. This is the nature of gifts. They move and become more valuable. The more something is shared, the more valuable it becomes. This is what's behind the phrase, Indian giver. This expression was and may be still used as an insult about somebody who took something who took back something they had given up. But it comes from misunderstanding what it means to be part of a gift economy and not the private property colonial economy. Indigenous people understand the value of a gift to be based on reciprocity, a continuous circle of giving. So gifts come with an expectation that they'll be met with more giving. In this economy of endless giving, the value of our friendship with each other, with the plants and with Mother Earth becomes more precious the more we give each other. As you enjoy the gifts of berries from Mother Earth this summer, how can you become a gift to people, to plants, and to the planet that make it all possible?
Do you have your video first?
Wait a minute. Our family spent summer in a camping project in I can picture my father in his red checked wool shirt standing atop the rocks above the lake. When he lifts a coffee pot from the stove, the morning bustling stops. We know without being told that it is time to pay attention. He stands at the edge of the camp with a coffee pot in his hand, holding the top in place with a folded poplar. He pours coffee out on the ground in a thick brown stream. The sunlight catches the flood, stripping it amber and brown and black as it falls to the earth and streams into the cool morning air. With his face to the morning sun, he pours and speaks into the stillness. Here to God of Tahaz. The stream runs down the smooth granite to merge with the lake water. As lichen soaking in tiny clumps of moss, it follows a crack to the water's edge. The moss swells with the liquid and unfurls itself to the sun. Then and only then does he pour out streaming cups of coffee for himself, my mother, who stands at the stove making pancakes. So begins each morning in the Northwoods, the words that come before all others. I'm pretty sure no other family I knew began their day like that. But I never questioned the source of these words. My father never explained.
Robin continues, much of who I am and what I do is wrapped up in my father's offering by the lakeshore. Each of my days still begins with a version of Here's to the Gods of Tahaz, a thanksgiving for the day. But years later, with my own answer already in place, I asked my father, where did this ceremony come from? Did you learn it from your father and he from his? Did it stretch all the way back to the time of canoes? He thought for a long time. No, I don't think so. It's just what we did. It seemed right, that was all. Some weeks went by, though, and when we spoke again, he said, I've been thinking about the coffee and how we started giving it to the ground. You know, it was boiled coffee. There's no filter, and if it boils too hard, the grounds foam up and get stuck in the spout. So the first cup you pour would get that plug of grounds and be spoiled. I think we first did it to clear the spout. It was as if he told me that the water didn't change to wine. The whole web of gratitude, the whole story of remembrance, was nothing more than dumping of the grounds. But you know, he said, there weren't always grounds to clear. It started out that way, but it became something else, a thought. It was a kind of respect, a kind of thanks. On a beautiful summer morning, I suppose you could call it joy. That, I think, is the power of ceremony. It marries the mundane to the sacred. The water turns to wine, the coffee to a prayer. The material and the spiritual mingle like grounds mingled with humus, transformed like steam rising from a mug into the morning mist. What else can you offer the earth, which has everything? What else can you give but something of yourself? A homemade ceremony, a ceremony that makes a home.
And now it is time for our offer. I remember not too long ago on PBS, the Bill Lawyer show, and often a frequent guest on that show was Elizabeth Warren, when she was a professor at Harvard. And she taught us more about the spiral down economically, middle class, and those who consider themselves middle class, spiral down to those needing public assistance for medical debt. So for her, being a crisis in America, and continue with our medical profession and the death of people in comfort. So our collection this month is for rest in peace medical debt. When hospitals and insurers can't collect debt from patients, they sell the right to payment to collection agencies for a fraction of the cost of value. Rest in peace medical debt arranges to buy those debts to the most impoverished people, forgiving the debt and helping them clear their debt that they owe and any damage the debt has done to the credit ratings. So please give. I can think of no organization that represents the values for this. Leave the basket by the door.
happens our time for milestones and passages. Didn't have any that were emailed to me earlier. If there are some that want to be shared from the floor, that seems like the easiest way to do. I'll pause briefly. Yes, Jean? Oh, just talk and I'll keep it there.
I have missed a few services in the last few weeks for very wonderful reasons. My daughter and I got to travel to Michigan to visit my mom and my sister, and then my husband's family visited, and then we moved back to Boston last weekend. So it's been uneventful few weeks.
Whoa, a family kind of coming together and traveling and also saying goodbye and shifting to other chapters of life. Definitely several milestones and passages. Any others that someone wants to share? I also want to acknowledge that this is a kind of milestone that we're in our sanctuary. And it's a gradual passage that we're working on. As we're working through the technology and we're working with kind of changing COVID sensitivities, it's so good to be here. But I want to give a special thank you to Richard and Margie, Abby, and the team that is trying to solve all the technical problems to make it possible to be present and also present with members who are not able to be here physically. Just to give thanks for all that teamwork. Yes, definitely. We also acknowledge milestones and passages about justice and of different peoples. And there are milestones, some painful milestones in the lives of First Nations people. And you think about the passages of being displaced, of betrayed, broken treaties, of being targeted for genocide, and then displaced again, of children being separated from their parents and put into boarding schools, and some of them not returning home, and punished for using their native language, and witnessing the degradation of the natural spaces and the places that you count as sacred. So many difficult milestones and passages, but also some of hope. Recently, those discoveries of mass graves in the boarding schools in Canada, and a reminder of that boarding school policy of taking children, Indigenous children, away from their parents, and taking the Indian out of them, and some of those children not surviving the abuse and education that we gave them, and then being buried at those schools. When we heard that in the news, ironically, the chapter in Braiding Sweetgrass we were reading was putting down roots. And the conversation was at Ganajureke, which is a Mohawk village in upstate New York that I've brought youth groups to do service projects to, but it's in the Mohawk Valley. And Robin is meeting Tom Porter, the leader of that community there, and they're talking about Carlisle. Carlisle, one of our boarding schools in Pennsylvania. And Tom goes into their gift shop, which is filled with the fragrance of braiding sweetgrass and baskets for sale, and ways of celebrating and holding on to their indigenous culture. And then they pull a book off the shelf of people that had been to Carlisle. And they're naming, yes, that was my uncle, that was my great-grandfather, that was my grandfather's brother. And oh, he didn't make it back, or he went into the army afterwards, he never returned to the family. And they're comparing how they lost their relatives, sometimes in permanent ways, sometimes culturally, that it was really painful and difficult for them to come back together. And one of the passages is about planting sweetgrass and trying to reestablish that native grass in the Mohawk Valley, much like trying to reestablish their culture and their way of being in their family systems after so much painful struggle. So we're mindful of those passages. We're grateful for the promises of hope. We have an Indigenous person leading our Department of Interior, Deb Holland, and she is making sure we investigate all of our boarding schools and that we are accountable and responsible for every child who was entrusted into our care, and somehow make some reparations or acknowledgement of the pain that we need to repair. So it's been a difficult and rocky road for our First Nations, and yet the waters of justice are flowing through and bringing healing. In this time of meditation, join us as we go through a walk by Lana Falls and some time by Silver Lake, thinking about the milestones and passages of our land.
Being a close observer of nature and wondering about the relationship between plants, animals, and people is not just indigenous wisdom, it is good science. And as a painter, I would say it's good art. Avi and I are sharing a reading from Braiding Sweetgrass from the chapter Asters and Goldenrod, in which Robin asks a question as a youth who later discovers deeper meaning through science and traditional wisdom. People flock to our hills in upstate New York for the fiery sweet of October, but they often miss the sublime treatment of September fields. As if harvest time were not enough, peaches, grapes, sweet corn, squash. The fields also are embroidered with drifts of golden yellow and pools of deepest purple, a masterpiece. If a fountain could jet bouquets of chrome yellow and dazzling arches of chrysanthemum fireworks, that would be Canada goldenrod. Each 3-foot stem is a geyser of tiny gold daisies, ladylike in miniature, exuberant and honest. Where the soil is damp enough, they could stand side by side and be perfect counterpart to New England asters. Not the pale domesticates of perennial borders or weak sauce of lavender or sky blue, but full-on royal purple that would make a violet shrink. The daisy-like fringe of purple petals surrounds a disc bright as the sun at high noon, gold orange pool, just a tantalizing shade darker than the surrounding goldenrod. Alone, each is a biobotanical superlative. Together, the visual effect is stunning. It's stunning gold, the heraldic colors of the king and queen of the meadow, a regal procession in the complementary colors. This is why I told my college advisor that I wanted to learn about asters and goldenrod. So beautiful together. Why do they stand beside each other when they could grow alone? Why this particular pair? There are plenty of pinks and whites and blues dotting the fields, so it is only happenstance that the magnificence of purple and gold and side by side. Einstein himself said, God doesn't play dice with the universe. What is the source of this pattern? Why is the world so beautiful? It could so easily be otherwise. It seemed to me like a good question to ask.
But Robin's advisor said, it's not science, not what botany was about. She wanted to know, Robin wanted to know what certain stems bend easily for baskets and some would break. Why the biggest berries grew in the shade and why they made us medicines. Which plants are edible? Why those little pink orchids only grow under pines. Not science, he said, and you ought to know, sitting in this laboratory, a learned professor of botany. And if you want to study beauty, you should go to art school. But Robin insisted on pursuing studies in botany. At first, she suppressed her childhood questions and her indigenous traditions, but later understood that science and indigenous wisdom are best woven together. She writes, we understand the thing only when we understand it with all four aspects of our being: mind, body, emotion, and spirit. I came to understand this shortly when I began my training as a scientist, that scientist privileges only one, possibly two of these ways of knowing mind and body. But it is a whole human being who finds the beautiful path.
That September pairing, purple and gold, is reciprocity. Its wisdom is that the beauty of one is illuminated by the radiance of the other. Science and art, matter and spirit, indigenous knowledge, and Western science. Can they be goldenrod ambassadors for each other? Can they become complementary and beautiful partners?
My name is Alan Moore, and together with Carol Harden, we're going to read a section of Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Raising Sweetgrass, which has to do with cattails. Robin liked to take her classes into the field to experience her teaching directly in nature. The following reading is about a class which she took into the field to talk about and to experience cattails. To pull cattails, you reach under the water to the base of the plant and tug. If the sediments are loose enough, or if you're strong enough, you can pull up the whole plant, rhizome and all. The problem is that you can't tell whether the shoot will snap or not until you tug with all your might and it suddenly breaks free, leaving you sitting in the water with muck dripping from your ears. The rhizomes, essentially underground stems, are a real prize. Brown and fibrous on the outside, they are white and starchy on the inside, almost like a potato, and they taste pretty good roasted in the fire. Soak cut rhizomes in clean water, and you'll soon have a bowl of tasty starch that can become flour or porridge. Some of the hairy rhizomes have a stiff white shoot emerging from their end, a more than vaguely phallic organ of horizontal propagation. This is the growing point that will spread the cattails through the marsh. Invoking the hierarchy of human needs, some of the guys have a little fun with them when they think I'm not looking.
The cattail plant, Typha latifolia, is like a giant grass. No distinct stem, but rather a rolled bundle of leaves that sheath around each other in concentric layers. No one leaf could withstand wind and wave action, but the collective is strong, and the extensive underwater network of rhizomes anchors them in place. Harvested in June, they're 3 feet high. Wait until August, and you have leaves 8 feet long, each about an inch wide, and strengthened by the parallel veins running from base to softly waving leaf tip. These circular veins are themselves encircled by sturdy fibers, all working to support the plant. In turn, the plant supports the people. Cattail leaves, split and twisted, are one of the easiest sources of plant cordage. Our string and twine. Back at camp, we'll make twine for the wigwam and thread finding for weaving. Before long, the canoes are brimming with bundles of leaves and look like a flotilla of rafts on a tropical river. We tow them to shore where we begin to sort and clean them by taking each plant apart, leaf by leaf, from the outside in. As she strips the leaves, Natalie drops hers quickly to the ground. "Ooh, it's all slimy," she says, and starts to wipe her hands on her muddy pants as if that will help. When you pull the leaf bases apart, gobs of cattail gel stretch like clear, watery mucus between the leaves. At first it seems gross, but then you notice how good your hands feel. I've often heard herbalists say that the cure grows near to the cause, and accordingly, though gathering cattails is guaranteed to get you sunburned and itchy, the antidote to discomfort is in the plants themselves. Clear and cool and clean, the gel is refreshing and antimicrobial, the swamp's answer to aloe vera gel. The cattails make the gel as a defense against microbes and to keep the leaf bases moist when water levels drop. These same properties that protect the plants protect us too. It feels so soothing on sunburn that soon the students are smearing themselves with slime.
The cattails have made a superb material for shelter with leaves that are long, water-repellent, and packed with closed cell foam for insulation. In the old days, fine mats of cattail-like leaves were sewn or twined to sheathe a summer wigwam. In dry weather, the leaves shrink apart from one another and let the breeze waft between them for ventilation. When the rains come, they swell and close the gap, making the mat waterproof. Cattails also make fine sleeping mats. The wax keeps away moisture from the ground, and the Aranchema provide cushioning and insulation. Aranchema is the fibery part of the plant. A couple of cattail mats, soft, dry, and smelling like fresh hay, under your sleeping bag, make for a cozy night.
Squeezing the soft leaves between her fingers, Natalie says, "It's almost as if the plants made these things for us." The parallels between the adaptations evolved by the plants and the needs of the people are indeed striking. In some native languages, the term for plants translates to those who take care of us. Through natural selection, the cattails developed sophisticated adaptations that increased their survival in marsh. The people were attentive students and borrowed solutions from plants, which increased their likelihood of survival. The plants adapt, the people adopt. As you keep peeling away leaves, they get thinner and thinner, like the husk of corn as you get near the cob. Al, you're not in the picture. At the center, the leaves nearly merge with the stem, a soft column of white pith, as thick as your pinky and as crisp as a summer squash. I snap the pith into bite-sized pieces and pass it around. Only after I eat mine do the students venture a nibble, looking at each other sideways. Moments later, they're hungrily stripping stalks for themselves, like pandas in a bamboo patch. Sometimes called cossacks, asparagus, the raw pith tastes like a cucumber. And for those in the room, we have some samples. For now, sure. The cattail communion.
You don't have to. Little break like this. You don't have to. They won't make you sick. You get some more of those. I'll get them.
My name is Larry Vanderberg. Robin's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, is such an eloquent and evocative piece of writing that the best I can do to justly convey her message for this service is to paraphrase as much as possible. In one chapter, she describes a sacred place where 5 Native American tribes joined together to form the Haudenosaunee, that is the Iroquois Confederacy, and lived by the great law of peace. This holy place was part of a territory that stretched from the Pennsylvania border up to Canada.
Lush green hills and moss-covered ledges of limestone cradled springs that ran down to a pristine clear lake. The advance of white settlers industry, federal and state governments, and a long series of treaties, all broken, have completely transformed this special place. We know it as Onondaga Lake, around which the city of Syracuse, New York was built. In the wake of industrial devastation, it became one of the most polluted lakes in the United States. 9 areas around this lake were designated Superfund sites. Beds of industrial waste and sewage ran 60 feet deep. Rainwater leached chemicals so intense it was as salty as soup and corrosive as lye. It had a pH of 11. It would burn your skin. Ms. Kimmerer revisited one of these largely deserted sites one late fall afternoon, sometime prior to 2013 when her book was published, and discovered it was then used for haunted Halloween hayrides offered by the local Lions Club, replete with mock displays of grisly executions, corpses, tombs, electric chairs, and the like. The Onondaga people initiated a long, tortuous process of remediation and restoration of the sacred ground with a lawsuit in 2005. 5 years later, a federal court dismissed the suit. But debates about what to do, how much to spend, who's responsible, and how to go about it continue to this day. In the face of thousands of environmental horrors like Onondaga, it would be easy to fall into despair. A haunted hayride of environmental disasters would lead to woe and tears. But we must grieve. Joanna Macy said, "Until we can grieve for our planet, we cannot love it." Grief is a sign of spiritual health. Kimmerer warns us, despair is paralysis. It robs us of our agency. It blinds us to our own power and the power of the earth. Restoration is a powerful antidote to despair. It's not enough to grieve. It's not enough to just stop doing bad things. How we approach restoration of land depends on what we believe land means. Ms. Kimmerer envisions an environmental hayride with several scenes depicting different definitions of land. Stop 1, land as capital. A greasy white chalk sludge, a laborer placing the waste output pipe from a chemical plant. Behind him, a man in a suit. If land is only a means to make money, then these fellows are doing it right. Stop 2, land as property. If land is just private property, just a mine of resources, then you can do what you want with it and just move on. In this land as litter box approach, if you make a mess by mining or industry or soil depletion, all you need to do is cover up the mess when you leave. Stop number 3, land as machine. Engineers and foresters can reestablish function, and especially structure, to a very specific purpose. For example, using plants as an engineering solution to water pollution. If land is a machine and humans are the drivers, this makes sense. Think monoculture. Diversity may impede production. But in the indigenous worldview, ecosystems are not machines, but communities of sovereign beings. What if those beings were the drivers? Let's go to stop number 4. Land as teacher, land as healer. A scruffy patchwork of vegetation brought to you by the oldest and most effective land dealers, the design firm of Mother Nature and Father Time, LLC. There are barren expanses without a living thing, but there are also teachers of healing: birch, alder, cattail, moss, switchgrass, anthills, maybe even some shrubs like honeysuckle and buckthorn. Plants and natural resources are in soul demand. The plants are adapting and showing us the way of healing the wounds, a testament to the ingenuity and wisdom of plants more than the action of any people. At Onondaga Lake, factories have closed and new sewage treatment plants have helped. Water is cleaner and fish are returning. Weedy species are slowly taking hold. Restoration is an opportunity for partnership, for us to help. But our part of the work is not complete. Stop number 5, land as responsibility. Drastic changes created by miles of asphalt and decades of pollution on the scale of Onondaga mean that the plant life that first takes hold on restored land will likely be non-native species that can withstand the new conditions. The land will be naturalized, but not native. To restore native species, Mother Nature and Father Time need some help from intrepid souls pushing wheelbarrows and planting seedlings, a reciprocal partnership with land and people. Restoration is imperative for healing the earth, but reciprocity is imperative for long-lasting, successful restoration. We restore the land, and the land restores us. Land, plants, animals, and their human allies can make small steps, but ultimately the earth will decide. Nature herself is a moving target, especially in the era of rapid climate change. Here is where our most challenging and rewarding work lies, in restoring a relationship of respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and love. Step 6, stop 6. Land as sacred, land as community. Despite many heartbreaking legal setbacks, the Onondaga people have not given up on their land. Driven by the great law of peace, they have continued to work to restore the lake and the land. They have held water communion ceremonies to celebrate the sacredness of Onondaga Lake and renew the covenant between the people and the water. Restoring land without restoring relationship is an empty exercise. It is relationship that will endure and relationship that will sustain the land. Reconnecting people and the landscape is as essential as re-establishing proper hydrology or cleaning up contaminants. It is medicine for the earth. They continue in the hope that one day there will be another stop on the hayride that says, stop number 7, land as home.
My name is Helene, and I live on the land of the Mohawk. For our departing blessing, I invite you to join me in reading the refrain for this recommitment to the healing of our Mother the Earth. We join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to renew the forests, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children. We join with the earth and with each other. We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life. Blessed be, and amen. Thank you.